When a president feels the ground shaking beneath his throne, sometimes he doesn't confess. He detonates. He launches a war. Not always against a real enemy, but against a narrative he can control. They call it a war on drugs, a war on terror, a war on crime. But beneath those words lies something else. Fear disguised as security. Power dressed as morality. This is not just politics. It's theater. A performance where organized crime becomes the perfect villain to justify control. Facts are no longer facts. They're weapons. Concepts are no longer ideas. They're shields. When crime prevention becomes military doctrine, democracy forgets how to listen and only remembers how to march. Let's start from here. We like to think that wars on crime are about safety, about protecting good citizens from bad people. It's a comforting fairy tale. The honest majority defended by a strong state against a dark minority of criminals. But criminology, if it's honest, is not in the business of fairy tales. It's in the business of asking, who defines the enemy? With which data? And for whose benefit? When a government declares a war on drugs, it rarely means a war on the financial systems that launder drug money. When it declares a war on terror, it almost never means a war on the geopolitical games that fed that terror for decades. And when it declares a war on crime, it usually doesn't mean a war on corruption, tax evasion, or corporate crime. No, the war almost always targets the visible poor, not the invisible powerful. Organized crime in this script is not only a real phenomenon, it's also a symbolic tool. It becomes a monster you can project on certain neighborhoods, certain faces, certain passports. You inflate it, simplify it, dramatize it. You repeat mafia, gang, cartel, clan. You turn entire territories into danger zones, entire communities into suspect populations. Do criminal groups exist? Absolutely. Do they harm people, destroy lives, distort democracies? Every day. But here's the uncomfortable part. Without a certain level of crime, a certain level of fear, many political projects would lose their engine. You need fear to sell emergency. You need emergency to suspend guarantees. You need suspended guarantees to extend control. And suddenly the criminal becomes not only an enemy to fight, but a resource, a pretext, a justification. From a criminological perspective, we see a pattern. Instead of asking, why do certain territories produce specific criminal markets? We are told, these people are dangerous. We must control them. Instead of asking, what role do inequality, corruption, and impunity play in crime? We are told, the problem is softness. We need harsher sentences, more police, more prisons. Instead of asking, which crimes cost more to society, street robbery or large-scale financial fraud? We are told, the real threat is the kid on the corner, not the gentleman in the boardroom. This is how selective morality works. Morality that punches down, never up. Morality that points at the street dealer, but not at the bank cleaning cartel money. Morality that screams about a stolen phone, but whispers about billions disappearing through tax havens. When prevention becomes military doctrine, every social problem is translated into a security problem. Drug use? Not a health issue, not a social issue. A war. Migration? Not a complex global process. A threat. Protest? Not conflict in a democracy. A risk to public order. Once everything is framed as danger, the menu of responses shrinks. Police, army, surveillance, special units, emergency laws. You don't need to listen anymore. You just need to deploy. And here is where democracy starts to forget itself. Democracy is supposed to be noisy. Debates, conflicts, uncomfortable questions, opposition. Security discourse hates noise. It wants silence, obedience, linear narratives. We are under attack. Trust us. We'll protect you. Don't ask too many questions. So you end up with citizens treated like potential suspects, not political subjects. You end up with neighborhoods treated like battlefields, not communities. You end up with dissent treated like disloyalty, not participation. As a criminologist, I am not interested in defending criminals. I'm interested in defending complexity from those who kill it for electoral profit. Because when you turn crime into a monolith, you can do anything in the name of fighting it. You can expand mass surveillance. You can militarize streets. You can normalize stop and search based on skin color, postcode, or accent. You can build more prisons while cutting budgets for schools, mental health services, social housing. And if someone dares to ask, "Is this working?" you answer, "If we stop, chaos will explode." Do you want chaos? Fear is the best censorship device. People censor themselves. Let's talk about facts. In this theater, facts are not neutral. They are selected, inflated, repeated, or buried depending on what story must be told. If a crime fits the narrative, the foreign criminal, the gang, the dangerous addict, it becomes headline, special episode, political speech. If a crime exposes structural rot, corruption, financial abuse, institutional responsibility, it becomes an isolated case, a technical issue, a matter for the courts. Same law, very different spotlight. So the message that travels into the public imagination is clear. There are crimes that threaten us, and crimes that, frankly, don't matter enough to disrupt the show. This is how you build moral hierarchies of victims. Some deaths generate decrees, task forces, front pages. Others generate silence and footnotes. Now, let's flip the question. What would we see if we looked at crime without the fog of the war narrative? We would see that most violence is not spectacular. It's domestic, intimate, routine, blessings. Most harm is not committed with guns in the street, but with contracts, algorithms, financial instruments. Most victims never appear on TV. We would also see that repression alone does not solve the conditions that feed criminal markets. You can arrest a dealer. If the demand is there, if the social void is there, if the money flow is protected, someone will replace him in hours. Military logic says, eliminate the enemy. Criminological logic, if it's honest, says, understand the system that produces that enemy, benefits from that enemy, and needs that enemy. These are not comfortable conversations. They don't fit in a slogan. They don't help in the polls next Sunday. But they are the only conversations that might actually reduce harm instead of just redistributing it. So where does that leave democracy? A democracy that only knows how to march is a democracy that is slowly forgetting how to think. Security is necessary. People have the right to feel and be safe. But security without rights is not security. It is control. And control without accountability is not order. It is authoritarianism with good PR. We should be suspicious of every speech that tells us, the situation is too dangerous for doubt, too serious for criticism, too urgent for rights. When someone tells you that, what they are really saying is, hand me the keys. I'll decide who the enemy is. You just applaud. So here is the point without makeup. Organized crime is real. Violence is real. Victims are real. But the story we tell about crime can either help us confront reality, or it can be used to tranquilize us while power rearranges the stage. A mature democracy doesn't need a permanent war to justify itself. It needs something much more tiring, less glamorous, less epic. Data, transparency, conflict, participation, rights, social policies that go beyond symbolism. It's less cinematic than a war on something, I know. But it's the difference between acting tough and actually reducing harm. When the next president, prime minister, or leader steps on a stage and announces a new war on drugs, on terror, on crime, on whatever enemy is fashionable that season. You don't have to clap automatically. You can ask, what you using? Which you ignoring? Who gains power from this emergency? And most of all, when this war ends, what will be left of our rights? Because a democracy that survives is not the one that never feels the ground shaking. It's the one that refuses to blow itself up in the name of safety.